The year always sees a lot of interesting insects crawling around our homes, be that inside or outside. Well, one particular insect, it's called a silverfish. It's basically a small, tiny little grey, silver type colour insect that usually appears in our back doors, front doors and the walls of your house. But pest control companies are receiving a lot more call outs to do with insects, and particularly this guy. We'll discuss that and hear about this next.
Cork Today on C103. Text or WhatsApp Patricia with your comment. 0862 103 103.
Pest control company Rentokil is reporting an increase in call-outs for the insect silverfish. Well, to find out more, I'm joined by Richard Faulkner from Rentokil. Good morning to you, Richard.
Good morning, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks, and thanks for joining us. Now, as this isn't TV, we've been describing, or trying to describe this morning anyhow on radio, what exactly this silverfish insect looks like, and we might be wrong, but we think from the photos that it's one of these grey silver little guys that we see in our back doors and back walls, or even front of doors or walls of our homes. Are we on the right track there?
Yeah, you're on the right track, and especially in sort of older buildings, going back to when I was a child, my grandma's, her bathroom, you'd always get a few scuttling across at certain times of the day.
And do we know why this year we seem to have more of these silverfish crawling around than we've had in other years?
Yeah, they've done really, really well this year. There's been a sort of boom with them, and we're finding with quite a lot of the insects over the last couple of years, we're getting booms, and it's a lot to do with the temperature and the weather, because we're getting a lot of good weather, it's a lot milder, and then we're getting a lot of rain and precipitation with decent temperatures. We're getting a lot more humidity, and humidity, these are an insect that do quite well with humidity as well. They like it quite damp, quite moist. So
it's perfect conditions for them to keep staying around and even grow their own families. And while we speak about silverfish, is this the same for other insects? Are we going to see this more and more over the next few years?
We're seeing a lot of booms in insects. We're seeing a lot of increases in sort of insect call-out numbers and insects doing better. And yeah, especially when we're going to have sort of milder, longer seasons. So we're getting plentiful rainfall, we're getting plentiful sunlight, we're getting a lot of vegetation, we're getting a lot of fruit and stuff. Then that's the boom. Your sort of primary insects that feed on that, and then the secondary insects which feed on those will boom as well. So yeah, it does seem to be a pattern.
All right, and with these particular silverfish I mentioned there, these particular insects, are they harmful to people, and can they cause harm to humans or indeed to the building structures?
They're more of a nuisance pest. It's more of an annoyance, but they feed on sort of cellulose. They generally feed on plant material, but they will feed on dead skin and that sort of thing, and skin cells if they're on the floor. They will do some minor damage to plaster. They will feed on sort of photographs, paintings, and that sort of thing, and other sort of household items, and the backing of carpets and all the sort of that sort of thing. So they can do minor damage, but it's more a fact that they're a nuisance pest, and people just don't like seeing them from that point of view.
Yeah, and what we always hear with various insects, that some of them can lay up to so many eggs every day. I mean, are these the same, that you could have a number of eggs that they will lay, and that will obviously produce more of these? Yeah,
there's different species of silverfish, but some of them can lay up to 60 eggs a day. So they're quite prolific in that point of view. But the silverfish, if we look at its biology, so you've got two different kinds of sort of reproductive cycle, what we call metamorphosis. So we've got complete metamorphosis, which is likes of your butterflies and flies, where you've got your egg, it hatches out into a caterpillar, a maggot, or a larvae. That feeds and grows, and then it goes into a chrysalis state, and then you get your beautiful butterfly, your fly. It's quite different from the other stages. With silverfish, the egg hatches, and you literally get a mini-me, a tiny version of the silverfish called a nymph. So they look identical to the adults, they move in the same way, they feed in the same way, but they just grow by molting their skins. So it can take up to a couple of years, depending on the species, for them to get to maturity, but once they do, then yeah, they can lay up to 60 eggs a day.
And these silverfish and other insects like them, I mean, are they native to Ireland, or are they just native to this part of the world, or how did they come here?
No, silverfish are definitely native to Europe in general, and we've got different species that are found throughout the world. So they've always been here. On these, they are part of our native fauna. So it's just, at the moment, it's one of those things that's a surging. With the introduction of central heating and stuff like that, and better ventilation in houses, you'd have seen declines over the years, and then things boom back and things get environmentally adapt. So this is probably what's happening here.
Okay, so we do know that they thrive in damp and humid conditions, so I presume outside the home as well, areas inside like a bathroom or basements, as you mentioned, are an ideal breeding ground for them, and then they'll go elsewhere in the house. So if people have them in their homes before they have to call out a pest control company like yourselves, is there any tips of getting rid of silverfish and indeed just these small insects like them?
Yeah, so anything like these guys, and you're going to get different things with humidity and dampness. You're going to get things like book lice and springtails and wood lice even, which are not necessarily insects but will be attracted in because of that environment. Main thing is to deny them food. It's like everything. Any animal, including us, we like a stable environment, don't we? So if we're constantly vacuuming and cleaning, it's making that environment more unstable for them, and it's taking away stuff they need. Any of your food, keep it stored in containers. Anybody who's got small children, you're fighting a right battle there, because I've got 3 little girls, and there's always food down the side of sofas and stuff that you don't know about, and lollipops stuck to things that you're not sure of. It's keeping on top of stuff like that. Keeping your food, as I said, in containers. Looking at the ventilation in your house. More modern houses are usually quite well ventilated, and it could mean that you just need to plug in a dehumidifier for a couple of hours a day just to take that moisture out, especially at this time of year now when it's getting damper and colder, and we're going to get condensation in homes because of heating and breathing and all that sort of thing. So we need to look at that. And then just looking at the structures yourself, skirting boards, any cracks in walls, make sure everything's properly sealed because it stops them having somewhere to hide in. If we can take away their harbourage, their living areas, take away their food, take away the humidity, you're going to take away the pest.
Okay, and we mentioned silverfish. I've a lot of people onto us here on text, and they want to ask you about these small, black, skinny, wormy things, as they describe them. They're on our doors and our walls outside. Any idea what they are and where they are coming from and how to get rid of them? I have a number of texts in on those. Are you familiar with those, Richard?
Again, without pictures, I can only speculate, but it is most probably going to be millipedes, I would say. And what we're looking at there, again, we're looking at the externals. You're going to look at any leaf litter. I know, and we had the same thing. It became quite trendy for a while. The sort of wood chip mulch that you put over your flower beds, that gets quite damp and it breaks down quite well, and it's cellulosey, and that will attract a lot of these things. So it's looking at your basically your landscaping. Keep your vegetation cut away from the walls, and make sure your flower beds are clean. Leaf litter, because at the time when we've got beautiful colours on the leaves, but they're starting to drop, and leaf litter gets nice and moist, and it's a good sort of medium for insects. So clean out your sort of flower beds, cut back your weeding and stuff like that. So we're seeing a similar thing with earwigs, definitely around my house, earwigs all the time. So it's a similar thing for them.
Yeah, and someone has just sent in a picture. You're right there. Very long. They're like worms. They're like a skinny version of a worm. The best way I can describe it.
With lots of tiny legs. And segmented body.
Yeah, on this one I don't see any legs. It just seems to be like a skinny worm, a black skinny worm with no legs at all on this. And there's about 20 of them on. This is Jack, who's WhatsApp in the picture on his particular wall, but there's no actually legs on these guys. Anyhow,
I'd say the legs are under them.
I presume they are from the photo.
Hopefully, I might be stamped with that one, but yeah, I would say it's some sort of millipede.
Okay, and again, the same precautions I presume for a lot of these insects to just have a clean home, and like you outlined for the silverfish, that will detract them from going into your house.
And a lot of things like these, especially with the millipedes, they don't really want to be inside. On that one, and they won't do too well inside. So it's just make sure you've got decent exclusion on the base of your doors, that sort of thing. Get your leaf litter and your vegetation cut back from your house, and that should pretty much do it.
Okay, well, Richard, good to chat, and we'll see what happens over the next few months, if we'll get an increase or not in these type of pests that come into the home. I presume when the weather gets colder, especially over the Christmas and January period, even though I know temperatures have dropped as it is, but I presume a lot of these pests just go missing when temperatures get into freezing.
Yeah, traditionally they would do, and that's the thing, as you said, because it's got so mild, we're not really getting the decent frosty patches like we used to. You used to get 2 or 3 weeks good hard permafrost, and we're not getting that really anymore. But yeah, insects traditionally will do in winter periods. Insect activity drops right down just because the temperatures aren't conducive for them on that one. And that's the thing, and we are starting to see lots more strange things, and people are getting phenomena like with the millipedes and stuff like that. So anything like that, we have a website that you can contact, send us pictures, we can identify them, give you advice for you, or just ring us in on 1890 666 444, and there'll be somebody to talk to you.
Okay, well, we'll see what happens over the next while with regarding all the various pests we're getting. I suppose, like everything, these insects, they have a meaning to be on this particular earth, and they are doing some good. And they are, like some people would have asked years ago, what are the bees doing? These insects as well are there for a particular reason. Exactly,
and that's the thing. And you're seeing bees have become very, very prevalent at the moment, and there's a lot of work being done with bee conservation, which because they are extremely important to ecosystems. But so are things like wasps and flies. Flies are literally nature's bin men. It's just when they sort of encroach into our domain and become a risk to our public health, and we need to look at them. But as you said, everything's got its place and it's there for a reason.
Okay, Richard, good to talk, and thanks for joining us. That is Richard Faulkner there joining us from Rentokil on the silverfish and all those other strange insects that are appearing in people's homes and indeed outside their homes over the last number of weeks. One of the main reasons there, as he said, is the humid weather and the damp weather we're getting here over the last number of months. Usually temperatures a number of years ago would have been colder anyhow. Maybe we're just in a certain situation whereby we are in the high temperatures and indeed damp weather, which is leading to these guys, even though the last few nights hasn't been very high temperature wise. Anyhow, thanks to Richard for joining us on that, and thank you to a lot of people who've been in touch with their pictures of various ants and indeed insects on their homes. Hopefully Richard answers some of your questions there.